And is that why the ambassador then, Jeff Raby, is back here? Because it's an acceptance, and they're accepting that there's a lot of work to do. They need to apply their minds to it a little more.
Well, gee whiz, I mean, there are so many reasons why he could be back here. It's hard to say which one activated his return. But the problem remains, I think as Paul said, the political problem remains with the opposition. We had Julia Bishop mounting an argument which had only one conclusion, that was that Ms Kadir should not have been allowed into Australia. We had...
which is something that Philip Ruddock said.
Philip Ruddock didn't muck about. He just said it was a mistake.
She was also critical of the speech that Kevin Rudd delivered at the university, where he had a go at them over human rights.
No, I mean...
This is ridiculous, isn't it?
So what is the opposition arguing for? That we should refuse visas to people because the Chinese don't like it. They're building themselves into a house which is going to look rather ugly if they continue that line.
And then there was that other reference in her press release as well. She talked about veiled threats to China over Stern who? Now, I thought they were demanding...
I thought they were being too meek and mild.
Firm action.
Look, I agree. The opposition has been ludicrous on this. I think there's only one political point to make about it, and that is that this shows what a gigantic conceit it was of Kevin Rudd a year ago to float himself as the world's intermediary with China. He's the one that now needs the intermediary with China. But the fact that we're in a dispute with a rising, highly nationalistic, non-democratic country is not to our discredit. It's not to Kevin Rudd's discredit.
It's not surprising.
And it's not surprising. It's absolutely inevitable, and you will see more of that as China rises, and the opposition better get aware of that. But here again is another issue, another example of how the issue that we should all be talking about is how we manage this as a country rather than how terrible the opposition is. There are questions to ask about Rudd's handling of it, and it doesn't matter how hopeless the opposition is.
Julie Bishop's press release. She put it out, and
I agree.
And Philip Ruddock's statement.
And so the media at the weekend, most of them wrote about that and not about the government's dilemma.
Warren Truss just said, look, the problem is consistency. You've got to be consistent. And I think that's absolutely right.
Spot on.
And I do think that there are inconsistencies on the government side. I mean, I think Stephen Smith did a terrific job this week in just being honest and upfront about what was happening and frank about the difficulties. Now, you know, I think there's been a bit of strangeness from Kevin Rudd. I mean, one moment he's terribly friendly, next minute he's, you know, shuffling away from ambassadors on television couches and strange things like that. I mean, that's odd, right?
Yep.
But I think the coalition, on balance, has been odder. I mean, when Rudd went and made that speech in China, and he was being called on to address human rights very aggressively by Brendan Nelson at the time, then as soon as he mentioned, you know, speaking in Mandarin, human rights on Chinese territory, all of a sudden there was this, you know, well, I hope he hasn't buggered up our trade relationship kind of thing. I mean, that's the problem.
I'm not arguing that. I'm actually agreeing with you completely.
I know,
I'm just saying that this...
And I'm enjoying this moment. I'm enjoying it.
I know you're enjoying it. Look, just in terms of consistency, Ms Kadir has been here 3 times this year. One in February, one in March. She applied again for an August visit and was granted that. That's consistent.
And now everybody knows her name as well. Earlier, she would have been an anonymous lady in
Talk
blacks.
about mismanagement. China has mismanaged this. They've managed single-handedly to create an amazing a symbol that we've never heard of before.
Exactly, yeah.
But you know, the other interesting... You're right to say this was inevitable, this tension. I had, and I wouldn't be one... I'd be one of a number of journalists and whatever to have had a deputation from the Chinese embassy around the time that Rudd was elected by a couple of emissaries trying to find out how would relations go. And it seemed to me quite clear, in their own minds as well as mine at the time, that this would not go well because Kevin Rudd has got, among other things, that tension of seeming too close to China and therefore wanting to trade off it, but also being vulnerable to the Manchurian Candidate argument. And so it's proved.
I need to change the topic now to another relationship, that is between the Nationals and the Liberals. Now, are we seeing something quite fundamental here? Is there going to be a different relationship? There's always a different relationship in opposition anyway, isn't there, in terms of the coalition?
That's right. In government, differences can be overcome with another truckload of dough sent out to the regions. I think it's interesting that what a senior National said to me this week in terms of the ETS, he said, look, we're going to go after the blue-collar workers, bugger the doctors' wives. that could be a very effective National Party strategy in those Queensland seats, in industrialised Queensland seats, and although they don't stand a chance, but in the Hunter region and some other regions. You can understand the Nats doing that because they haven't got much else going for them. Yeah. And they will have what they call a velvet divorce over this issue. And they'll try to pretend that it's not the biggest economic overhaul of Australia since the introduction of income tax, and try to get on with life.
Just on that theme of the divorce, Joe Hockey was asked about it during the week, and he sort of picked up on that theme. Here he is.
It's a marriage, and from time to time there'll be an argument over the kitchen table, but hopefully the marriage still lasts. It's just going through the pains of a marriage, isn't it? It's like any marriage.
Should supporters be worried that the...
Interesting children, though. We'll just stop there, I think.
Joe Hockey's extended family analogy. But I mean,
I think the kids in the coalition and the Nats, I think that's what he's implying.
Yeah. But Joe Hockey's analogy of the family as it applies to Liberal and coalition party politics is getting more and more detailed by the day. I mean, it's Wilson Tuckey's the mad uncle. Then there's this troubled marriage. I mean, I don't know who Joe thinks he is in all of this.
Steve Fielding, hang on one second. Steve Fielding from Family First had an idea about how they could approach this, and of course Barnaby Joyce, as always, had a very immediate response.
Look, I think the Nationals should probably consider joining Family First because, frankly, they're not comfortable with the Liberal Party. That coalition is just a sham.
What I like about Family First is even though they've got one member, sometimes they've got two positions. Anything's worthwhile contemplating for about 3 seconds.
Maybe they're the sort of strange intermarried cousins of the family.
What is interesting, I think the Nationals have picked up on the fact that Steve Fielding has used the climate change scepticism to project himself as a bit more serious than he was taken before. And I think it's worked for him very effectively.
It's not the stuff of a coalition, though.
No, well, maybe not. But the other point is, can I just note, once again, we're talking about the coalition when in fact it is the Rudd government that is putting on Australia an amazing tax that won't actually do what it claims it will.
Happened they were more entertaining.
Yeah, I know, but isn't it amazing that every political issue now segues into how hopeless the coalition is, which allows the Rudd government to escape the most bizarre...
Okay, well, you know that won't happen with our next segment. We're getting on to talking pictures now, but more with our panel shortly. Annabelle Crabb, Malcolm Farr and Andrew Bolt.